Hello, good folk from the IEEE VR 2020. I'm Tim McKenzie, a researcher here at the Human Interface Technology Lab in New Zealand. My colleagues are Rory Clifford, Stefan Lukosh, Rob Lindemann, and Simon Herman. We've been working on a multi-sensory aerial firefighter training simulator, and we've just been looking at the effects it might have on situational awareness, workload, and presence. Right, so we have different kinds of fires. Wildfires are pretty big in New Zealand. They're often difficult in remote terrain. Air attack, what is this? Well, it's actually fighting these kinds of fires from the sky, from different kinds of aircraft. So for example, we have this bucketing helicopter dropping water from a monsoon bucket on the target. Fixed-wing aircraft do the same. We have the Air Operations Platform, and that's where the Air Attack Supervisor, or AAS, sits. Their role is to continuously maintain a relevant conceptual model of an emergency situation and direct the air crews to attack the wildfire in the most safe and effective way. It's a very demanding role that requires quick and sometimes life-saving decision making. As you can imagine, that training for this role is tricky. It's complex and involves a lot of different people involved in effort. It's expensive, risky, and practical, as you can see. And as a result, it's only practiced 4 or 5 days per year in New Zealand. And Fire and Emergency New Zealand, that is FENS, looking for viable sort of alternative supplement training. So this presents an opportunity for a technological supplement, such as a VR training simulation. So diving deeper into the skills and psychological reasoning in an AAS decision-making process during an aerial firefighting training, as well as the application of VR in this space, there's 3 important concepts that we'll cover briefly. First of all, we have situational awareness. For an AAS, this is their up-to-date understanding of an emergency situation. We're talking about the position of the fire line, its intensity and wind direction, as well as the positions and the actions of the aerial firefighting crews who are attacking these fires. Workload is a complex and multifaceted concept. For an AAS, what we're talking about is the mental and emotional strain they experience when performing their role. Fires can go on for long periods of time, and the AAS can also experience a physical demand as well. Finally, we have presence. This is that VR concept of that sense of disbelief, and that you have a sense of being and acting in a virtual space as if it's reality. This is a key factor for skill transfer in VR, and that the greater the sense of presence, the greater the potential skill transfer a user can experience. So, this is where our multi-sensory VR training system comes into play. We simulate the Air Operations Platform, where the user, who is the AAS, will sit inside a 270-degree curved projection display, also known as the CPD. There's a pilot there who's flying the virtual helicopter. They're experiencing spatial sounds. There is the vibro-tactical feedback of the chairs, the thump, thump, thump of the helicopter engine. We're planning to add olfactory sensors, so a burnt petrol smell. All of this is to immerse the user in the experience, and so elicit a higher sense of presence and hopefully a higher skill transfer. And so FENS is looking to see if such a simulation can elicit similar levels of situational awareness and workload as the real experience. And so we are comparing the performance of the CPD to a head-mounted display condition, or HMD, to see which of the two provided, I guess, more suitable levels of these qualities that we're looking at. So our user study was a simulation of a live air attack training exercise, which would normally involve multiple fire crews and aircraft attacking a practice fire under the direction of an AAS in an air operations platform. There would also be an operations manager whose role was to provide additional advice to the AAS, as well as radio chatter and radio injects to increase the realism of the exercise. Now, FENS provided us with 12 professional or volunteer AAS firefighter trainees, and they were to act out different roles within our user study. As I described earlier, one of the trainees would act as the AAS inside the air operations platform. This was our simulator, and so we tracked their situational awareness, workload, and presence through the use of post-trial questionnaires. SART for situational awareness, NASA's TLX for workload, and the IPQ for presence. Now, the AAS would use the communication systems to coordinate two other radio supervisors, that is, two other trainees, who are commanding two pilots who are operating two other virtual helicopters who are dumping water on the fire line. And there was also an operations manager providing those radio injects. And this was so the trainees were able to have more radio comms experience as well. So the following is a demonstration of our simulator in action, as well as aspects of our user study. In the next scene, you're going to see the pilot giving additional information about the fire line to the AES. Here is an actual scene of an air attack training exercise. And now our simulation of the very same. In the next scene, you're going to see an example of our communications. And in our final example, a bucketing helicopter is dropping water on the target at the command of the AAS. So in terms of the results of our user study, the HMD condition had a higher situational awareness score than the CPD condition. We believe that's because the HMD users couldn't actually see the pilot, and so they were interacting with the pilot less than the CPD users. And you'll notice that the CPD users consequently have a higher attentional demand score, which lowered their situational awareness overall. For workload, the HMD condition had a lower overall score than the CPD condition did, and you'll see that's because the mental demand and temporal demand of the HMD was less, again because the users were not interacting with the pilot so much. The CPD participants kind of confirmed this observation because they often gave feedback saying that they struggled to form a mental picture of what was going on with all the communication that was happening. Finally, the HMD has marginally higher presence than the CPD condition. What is really interesting is that both systems overall have higher presence than previous iterations of the system, which shows that as we increase the amount of sensors captured by the system, the users actually experience higher rates of presence. This observation was confirmed by the firefighters, who repeatedly praised the system's realism and ecological validity for training. They experienced genuine feelings of vertigo inside the helicopter, as well as stress and pressure from the scenario. Every study has limitations, and ours was no exception. In particular, the small sample size meant that we couldn't perform a statistical analysis, which meant that we couldn't generalize the results. Although the use of professional firefighters does contribute to the ecological validity of the study, there was a network failure which impacted some of the trials, and the use of subjective questionnaires does carry human bias issues, although this was necessary because of the nature of the open-ended aspects of the simulation and its non-repeatability. So to sum up, in collaboration with FENS, we conducted a user study to test our multisensory VR system in aerial attack training. We found out that it elicited similar levels of situational awareness and workload as the real thing, and that the HMD condition performed slightly better than the CPD. Furthermore, the feedback from the firefighters themselves praised the use of the technology and they'd like to see it expanded. So on that note, in terms of future improvements, we'd like to improve the stability of the network, add additional scenarios for training, and different sensors such as olfactory. And would also like to find an improved way for holistically assessing the situational awareness, workload, and presence of the users. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at any of the emails there. Thank you so much for listening.